What's up, Peoria? We back at it, State of Peoria. I'm Marc Supreme.
And I'm Chris Kaergard.
And of course, again, welcome to the State of Peoria, brought to you in part by State Farm agent Aaron Kilgore, located at 3805 North Sterling Avenue, where he specializes in car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, you name it, and investments now. He's the best in the business, and you can make him work for you by calling 309-685-7111. This is our sixth installment of the collaboration between Strictly Hip Hop and the PJ Star interview series, and it's all about the people.
And tonight we have our fifth candidate for Peoria mayor joining us, Jim Montelongo. We are at, as I count down here, we are 6 days and about 28 minutes away from the polls closing in the primary election. You can still vote early all the way up through next Monday. And of course, on election day from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So, Jim, we want to hear from you a little bit about your campaign, why you're running. We're going to start to fire some questions at you on all that. But thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. I'm really looking forward to tonight. Yeah.
So, yeah, again, thank you for being here. We'll kick it off for the people that might not have been following the mayoral race closely, or maybe not even the city council in general, because you've been on for quite some time. Who is Jim Montelongo?
I'm taking that's for me, right? Okay, so Jim Montelongo. You know what? I came to Peoria just a little over 31 years ago to go to Bradley University to earn an engineering degree. While at Bradley, I met a beautiful young lady there named Christina, who I later married. Together, my wife and I, we have 3 sons. I created a business called Advanced CAD/CAM Service. We are in our 30th year, and I volunteered over in this community at the Peoria Chamber of Commerce, being the chairman of the board at one time. I also have the pleasure of serving the community as a 3-term Peoria City Councilman.
Awesome. So, unlike a lot of the other candidates running for mayor, or actually any of them, you're placing a big bet on this office because you're the only candidate that would have been up for re-election, but you're going for the mayor office instead. Right. If this doesn't work out, unlike Rita and Sid, you really don't have an office to go back to. It's kind of a big bet. Obviously, you considered all of that, but what made you come to that decision?
You know what? I'm coming to the end of 3 terms. 1 at large, and being 2 terms as a district councilman. I feel like I've done a great job for my constituents over the last 8 years as a district councilman. I've got a lot of things accomplished. I got a great track record that I'm very proud of. Doing things like having a monthly breakfast meeting for the last 10 years. We've got a lot of other stuff done, creating a business roundtable, getting a substation at Northwoods Mall, Portillo's, Northmore Road completed. Those are just a few that I'm very proud of, and things that we got accomplished in the 4th District.
So, to take some people back, you ran for council in 2001, barely lost to Bill Spears. Then you came back 6 years later, winning the at-large seat. Then you made an attempt at Jahan Gordon for her state legislator seat in 2010 and lost, but chose not to seek re-election at your large seat. You still were able to do that. Now, again, from the first question, you would have nowhere to go. So what happens next in the event that the mayoralship doesn't come for you?
You know what? I still am busy at my office and still have the engineering business going strong. So, I'll have full-time efforts there at the office and working with my 2 sons, and we'll see where things go from there.
Is Jim done with politics, or because you bounce in, you bounce out, you come in and out as you want? Do you think that would be on the horizon for you on the back end, or no?
Hard to tell what's going on, and I kind of gauge about what's going on in the community, what keeps me engaged. So. Have to take a look at it when that time comes.
Okay, and before I shoot it to Chris, if you're watching, thank you guys for tuning in to State of Peoria. If you have questions for Jim Montelongo, please throw them in the comments and we'll get to them momentarily.
Okay, Jim, I want to dive right in and ask you about something that a lot of people in Republican politics are talking about. It's one of the first times I can remember that I've seen Ruby Arms and Barb Patterson on different sides of something, and that's the mailer that got sent out, that you and your campaign sent out about one of the other competitors in the race, Sid Ruckriegel. And raised some contrast points in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it an attack mailer, a negative piece, a contrast piece, whatever one of those you want to call it. You raised some questions in there about Councilman Ruckriegel and a conflict of interest that you see with him and then his partner Andrew Rand being chairman of the county board. And I guess I want to know, first of all, since that seems to be the only contrast mailer that's been sent out in this race, why'd you send it?
Yeah, I think it was all about power, control, and transparency. And I definitely felt like there is a conflict that the people needed to understand about exactly as you said, the chairman of the Peoria County and somebody interested in being the mayor. And I think people needed to understand those two positions and how close those relationships are.
Okay, are there a lot of issues where the city and the county would have separate interests in a subject? It seemed to me that the big issue that they've been working on in recent years that deals with any financial relationship is one where the county actually kind of bailed the city out and loaned them the money to redo the Allen Road intersection.
Yeah, what's important is that all of these discussions need to happen in the public space, and that's that's the transparency part, and that's what needs to happen. And we just need to make sure that that's the way our government operates going forward. That was my main point.
Okay, is that not happening now, you think, with somebody who is on the city council and the county board chairman?
I've not had that brought to my attention, but certainly it's beyond that too. It's also being the CEO for AMT, which they have an exclusive contract with the city of Peoria, and that does play right into our public safety and emergency services. And once again, that's an exclusive contract, and that's something that we need to make sure that everything is discussed in the open and being transparent.
Well, I guess what I'm going after there is, hey, have we had an instance in the past 5 years that Councilman Ruckriegel has been on the council where you have some reason to think that he has not been transparent, or that those things have been discussed outside of open session in the council?
Yeah, I think you probably have to ask him that, what his thoughts are, and maybe when he should have perhaps even abstained from discussion.
Okay. Marc, you got something to weigh in on with that?
Yeah, same thing. Because I got a bunch of text messages, as I'm sure you probably did too when it went out. It was just a bold stance to take. Did you second guess yourself at all with that, or were you concerned about the feedback that would come from that? Have you gotten any negative feedback that you can care to speak to? And feedback in general.
Well, certainly there was a couple thoughts from some people, but I think I hardly heard anything. So,
do you think the message landed? Because it seemed like almost one of those emails where you're like, "All right," and it just gets sent out. Like, was there any hesitation or?
No hesitation. Absolutely not.
Why only Sid in that as a mailer? And I guess I'm asking because Dr. Ali, Councilwoman Ali, also has a near relative, her daughter, who serves on the county board. Is that something that people should be concerned about with a conflict of interest if she's elected mayor? Or is this just because of mayor and county board chairman?
I think what's important is for candidates to come forward and bring everything out on the table in the first place, right when they start to run, and that's the easiest way to take care of something. Just lay it all out there. Let people know where you're at, and be truthful and be transparent. It's not something that I knew about that relationship either, but I think we're talking more about the power position of the county board chairman and the mayor of Peoria. That is a lot of power. That is a lot of power across the city and county.
Do you think that message landed? Do you think that message landed with and resonated with voters?
I think so. I think it got the message across.
Was it equally troubling, differently troubling when the previous county board chairman was a city employee? Whose direct supervisor reported to the city manager. When Tommy O'Neill was chairman, he worked for a guy who could put some pressure on him. Was that a concern?
I learned about that more towards the end. I would have to say, once again, you find out these things, you learn about them way after the fact sometimes, and that's not the best way to go about doing your business. If you feel like there's a conflict when you're running, you need to state that right at the beginning of your campaign.
Okay. I just have two more quick questions on this, and then I want to move on to some policy stuff. The first of which, the mailer talks about a previous issue that had arisen back in 1997 with then City Councilman Dave Ransberg running for mayor and Zan Ransberg, who was on the county board. And I wanted to ask you, because it says in there she was chairwoman on the county board, which,
she was the assistant or vice chair. So that was pointed out to us later after the fact.
Hey, does that change your argument at all there on them as a comparable concern?
No, that does not.
Okay. And then I want to physically and metaphorically turn the mailer over, because there are issues you raise on the other side of it, attacking Councilman Ruckriegel for his vote to raise taxes, 5 of them, shortly after being seated on the council. That's when the council in 2015 passed a budget on a 7-4 vote and voted to increase some of those taxes by votes of 9-2 and 10-1. The unifying factor there being Jim Montelongo, who was a red no vote on each of those taxes. The proposals were intended to bring in an additional $5.2 million with an M dollars a year for the city to do road repairs around the city. And I guess it certainly seems like a fair contrast on I voted for, or I voted against, he voted for. I guess I'd like to ask, because you've described our road condition right now as decrepit, which seems like Peoria gets a lot of flack for its roads, especially as we're coming up on springtime. You as a district councilman probably get more calls on road issues than almost anything else out there. I guess, where else would you have found the money to address roads so that they would be at least as good as decrepit right now?
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. So I would pivot back to, in my first term on the city council, I voted against the Pier Marquette. I had voiced my concern with those on the council that the potential loss, if this does not work as planned, which I did not believe it was going to, is now reaching almost $40 million for the city. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I was against. I voted against that on the floor. So it's hard when the mayor was trying to raise taxes over a complete blunder that Pierre Marquette has created for us, and that's where it's at. And your question was, so now
Basically, yeah. How would you?
Yeah, so we're going to be raising taxes, which once again, we know what happens when you raise taxes. You raise property tax, you raise sales tax, you raise the gas tax, included the stormwater utility, all these taxes that were passed. What do? They chase people out of town, and it chases businesses out of town. And what happens? We lose revenue. We don't have enough, so it creates more problems for the city to do that.
Absolutely, and I guess what I still want to know is, I presume Councilman Jim Montelongo in 2015 would have liked to get an extra $5 million to repair roads, which is what these taxes did. You were against the taxes. Would you have found the money some other place? Is there a couch cushion we didn't look under in the city budget at the time to fund those roads, or should we not have raised those taxes, not have spent that money each year for the last, up until last year when we didn't, to cover those road repairs in 16, 17, 18, and 19?
I think our approach should have been different in dealing with the budget at hand. I mean, I think most people, should know that it's probably very easy to raise taxes instead of dealing with the budget that you have at hand. And I think that's what the problem is. That's how I saw it, anyways. It was taking the easy way out. And Councilman Rockriegel himself calls himself that he was courageous to do that. I thought it was exact opposite, to raise taxes instead of dealing with the problem at hand. And this was, led by the mayor and his group of his other 5 votes to make things happen that direction.
Right, and I want to know what you would have done instead in those circumstances. Clearly, you would not have raised taxes, but again, what would you have done to address the road repair issues? Where else would you have gotten that money at the time? And I'm quoting from what you said on the floor that night. You said we did not do enough internally to justify a tax increase. Sounds to me like you were saying there were other spending reductions we should have looked at instead of bringing in money from citizens. So what would that have been?
I mean, we had these discussions during just this last year, just where we had to deal with a budget shortfall because of the pandemic, and what pushed us to make some tough decisions. One of them that I brought up, for example, was the amount of overtime, $5 million a year in overtime, and that's been pretty consistent. And just felt like those tough discussions needed to happen, and they didn't happen. And that's what I was looking for from the mayor. The mayor is the guy calling the shots and running the votes to get done what he thinks is in the best interest of the city. I just disagreed with the direction the mayor was going.
Okay, I'm going to toss it back over to Marc for a couple questions.
We can stay right here. You kind of alluded to it, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to expound on that. You kept saying we didn't deal with the problem at hand. The problem at hand, one of the things you mentioned is $5 million in overtime. But when it comes to the budgetary issues and just city council in general, how it handles its business, obviously it spends about $8 million a month. What do you think the problem at hand is? What is the problem at hand when it comes to city government and budgets?
Well, I think when we start to talk about your budgets, you have to have a very clear line about how much revenues you have coming in, and you build your budget around that. And that's where it all starts. And going forward, I mean, that's how we're going to have to look at things. We have to look at the amount of revenue coming in, and we have to take a look at where our expenses at. We're going to have to be on a very tight budget until we turn this ship around. And hopefully we start with more, we start with growth policies. We need to help our small, medium-sized businesses, and this is the approach that I will take to help them grow and expand jobs. So we're bringing in employees and hopefully residents into Peoria, which will mean more growth in our population, and as well, it will mean more revenues for the city. That's the only direction that we have right now. And I've been against all these taxes that have happened. We can no longer continue to tax our way out of these problems. We have to deal with our budget, and that's the direction that I would be taking our city.
Are there any bulk line items that may come off the top of your head where you're like, they'd be one of the first two things to go?
You know, it's first of all, my approach is going to be working with every city council member. I know what it's like to be on the outside and not a chance to sit down and have those discussions on what my thoughts are. I want to meet with every single council person and have these open discussions with them on how we're going to balance the budget, especially during these next few years. So that's going to happen. It's not going to be just what I want, but it's going to be what they want and what we can come to an agreement with as a council to be able to move us forward.
And while we're still talking about money, one of the things I had down was obviously the hotel has always been a topic of discussion ever since it came up, and it still remains to be. So would you have, you voted against the funding of the Pier Marquette. What would you have liked to see done with the Pier Marquette? Do you feel like what was put together just wasn't the right deal for the pier, or do you feel like the pier just shouldn't have been a priority in general?
You know what? Using taxpayers' money to get involved with this this private business, I think we stepped way out of bounds to do that. You know, what happens to the Pier Marquette? I guess whoever the stock owners are, they're the ones who need to decide what happens with it. And certainly we care about what happens there. But once again, that's a private business, and they need to deal with their own issues.
Jim, I want to jump in there and you know, put a period or an exclamation point on this. Is it just a large scale development like that, or do you feel the city should not be awarding any economic development money from the city to any business?
You know, I think first and foremost, you know, what does the city council's role play in the development? You know, it goes right back to our basic city services. I mean, in order to lure businesses in here, we start looking at our basic infrastructure, our roads, our sidewalks, our lighting, our policing, and you know, some of the things that I've learned from having these business roundtables with developers. The things that they were looking for is they wanted a safe, a clean, aesthetically pleasing type of environment, which included, you know, the landscaping, the lighting, the sidewalks, the ability to make sure that everybody is keeping up to a standard. And they say that's what makes people want to come into that type of area. So first and foremost, those are our primary objectives first with helping businesses grow, is taking care of the immediate infrastructure as a city.
I want to bring up, it's basically headline news now, what's going on in Texas. And with regard to city government responsibility, the mayor of Colorado City, Texas, resigned after a Facebook post in which he pontificated about how it's not the city government's responsibility to make sure citizens have working water and electricity, et cetera, and that members of their community need to stop being lazy and expecting a handout for these services. Where do you draw the line between municipal responsibility and citizen responsibility?
Anytime when you have massive type, and we're talking about these outages, I'm assuming, you know, and we had, for example, I know like in a few years ago, we had a bad ice storm, which caused a lot of power outage in our community. And part of it was, I thought a great part of it was because trees were not being trimmed back, these limbs fell on top of the power lines and did this damage, which caused massive outage, which then you start worrying about your people. You got to take care. You don't want anybody to get hurt or die because of a storm like that. You got to take care of them. It seemed like a very, I guess, heartless type comment for a public official to make. You got to take care of the people to make sure that they are safe and they are, safe from, just plain old safe, that they're in a safe environment.
And so with what you're describing as the budgetary issue, I mean, obviously the budget needs fixing. Anybody that's spending more than they're bringing in needs to fix something. But what you seem to describe is more of a skeletal type structure where we figure out as a city what we have and then what we have to spend, which is easy to do. But sometimes it's the citizens that get cut from the budget. How do you feel like you can manage both of those with getting the city budget back on track, but also not leaving certain citizens of the Peoria area behind?
I'm not too sure what examples that you're having there with making sure people are. It sounds like we're taking care of people right now, and that we'd be cutting them out.
I mean, simple things like people bring up as far as the arts. It's a big one that's been brought up with different mayoral interviews with the arts and just city functions. A lot of people want to figure out what we can do for IHSA that may or may not take a city investment the same way Pierre Marquette did to a different degree. But how can we balance that and still have growth and still maintain the citizen responsibility with service that we have already?
One of the things that I would like to see, and this is something that I have brought up to the city manager many times, is we need to see things back in some kind of business pro forma. If we're going to put X amount of dollars in something, we need to know what the outcomes are from those. And that part, as a business, that's how we need to be operating. Other than and there's certainly a lot of good programs that the city does have right now. But I'm wanting the city manager to communicate in a business format back to the city council, and being able to show what those values are back to the council so that we can tell our constituents, this is something that we've done. For example, if we're going to have a resident police officer, we need to know, like, ahead of time, what is that data right now that says this is why we have we need a resident officer right there. They might have a number of different things crime-wise, and this is why we want to have a resident officer there. It's going to cost us X amount of dollars to do it, but the net result is going to be we have just changed all these outcomes, which is going to create a safer environment. It's going to have more infill of residents moving into this area. It's going to be less police calls into this area. And we also need, so that's the part that I'm trying to get to. So we need to be able to say we're putting in $20,000, but it's saving us $150,000 if we do this. And we need to have more of that type of business discussion when we get involved with projects.
A couple more questions before I shoot it back to Chris. You mentioned business. It was aligned by a lot of politicians in the last decade or two with respect to the budget. And they said we need to run it like a business. And oftentimes it comes from business owners. You're a business owner. Do you feel like the approach for the city government and budgetary issues should be addressed like a business? Do we run Peoria like a business?
I think in a lot of cases, the city should run like a business, yes. But there's some other factors that get involved, which deals with public safety. And you need to make sure that you are fulfilling your responsibilities in providing that safety part of it. So I'm not sure if that's quite the question that I'm answering the question that you're looking for.
Yeah, no, yeah, you did. And last thing before I shoot over to Chris, you brought up the city manager. We interviewed the city manager early last month, and he said he'd like to stay on with the next mayor. If you are elected mayor, Pat Urick, do you keep him or no?
Yeah, you know what? I like Patrick. He's very knowledgeable, and I think one of the best city managers that I've seen over this period of time. And definitely he's been through some very challenging times, and I do hold a high expectation for him. But overall, I like Patrick.
Okay, so if you're elected mayor, do you keep him or no?
You know, it's more than just one person's decision. It's a whole entire council.
I'm talking to Montalango. Just your opinion as far as how you want to run the city. There's things that you said you wish the city manager would do as far as showing the results of certain investments made and communicating that clearly to the council. And there's some changes that I predict you would want to implement, which is why you're running for mayor. As far as city manager, what is your take on?
I think the city manager will respond to a different leader differently. I'm like, he's works very closely with the mayor now, and I would imagine that would be the same approach, to work very closely with him. And I want to do things differently, and hopefully he agrees with them, and we get off on the right foot together.
So yes.
So I would say yes.
Okay. All right, Chris.
Okay, Jim, I want to pivot over a little bit to some of the policy related issues. You're especially focused on the core essential services of a city and making sure we can provide those before some of those other maybe want to do sort of things. And if I'm misstating any of this, correct me, but it sounds like in particular you want to make sure we properly fund and support police, fire, handle our roads, things like that, correct?
Yes.
And where does the money come from in the short term and the long term to build that up? It sounds as though in the long term you want to see economic growth from more jobs, from existing companies here being able to grow and improve the tax base in the short term. In the first 2-3 years of a Montalango administration, how much can we realistically expect to be able to build up those agencies after some of the cuts that we've had in the last few years?
Could you state the question one more time to make sure I get that right?
Yeah, I'd like to know what your plan is, and if you think it's feasible to begin to rebuild police and fire staffing and spend an appropriate amount of money there within the next couple of years before economic conditions improve.
Right. And still, we got a budget for the rest of this year that we have to work with. But going forward, once again, we're getting into it's more of a process that we need to discuss with the council. We need to know what the challenges are. It gets back to, again, what does our forecast look like for our revenues coming in? And this is what our expenses should be, not to exceed them. And that's where we start first. And we need to work very closely with all our department directors and our city council. They're the ones that are going to help set the budget. I would like to make sure that we continue these meetings with the community. I think we had a couple last year. I'd like to see more community involvement in our budget, but I think that's where it all starts from, and that's how we start to build our budget in having those discussions. It's got to be done as a whole. We're definitely going to be in some challenging times. There's no doubt about it, and I think getting the right expertise around to help us deal with our financial crisis that we have. We'll figure it out.
Okay. How do you do that? Incidentally, as far as getting more citizen engagement in the budget, because you've been to some of those same meetings I have, where you get some of the real hardcore people who really care about or geek out on local government issues, they're the ones who show up and vote at the dead of cold in winter and February for city races. But a lot of those meetings, there's more city staff than people who show up to them. How do we make a pitch to get more people involved and get them to show up and have their voice heard there?
Sometimes you gotta take it to them. I talk about the monthly meetings that I have, and I want to continue those throughout the entire city, having these meetings. And that was one of the things I did, was have somebody from our city administration come in and talk about the budget with them and get feedback with them. I think the more meetings that we have, both, a formal budget meeting is going to happen this time, and we have everything set up, and people can come in from all over the place. But sometimes it's these small meetings that happen, and I want to continue those to get people's feedback. You get them engaged, and I think it would really help them once they know that you're going to be someplace at a certain time, continuously. They know where to find you. You'll get the feedback from them. So we'll have to do a lot of outreach that way. But I really want to continue with these meetings and being out there in the neighborhoods.
Okay. You also mentioned, as far as the city budget, one of the things that really troubles you the most there is the $5 million in overtime that gets spent in a given year, and that's been pretty consistent over several years. A lot of that does come from the police department and the fire department on their budgets. And the answer that we've routinely heard from the city when that gets brought up is that it's actually cheaper to pay overtime than it is to hire new full-time staffers to relieve some of that burden, or at least spread it out a little better to reduce the amount of overtime. One, do you buy that explanation? And two, whether you do or do not, what sorts of things there do you think can be cut from the overtime that police and fire in particular spend?
Right. And I've had some informal discussions as well with some of the people who are the boots on the ground and getting their feedback on that too. And I think there is some room for movement there. I want to make sure that we do the business case. I want to see it in writing. And this is something that I'm going to task the city manager with. You need to provide back this information. Show me in writing in this business pro forma, if that's what you want to call it, on show us how this works. Why is this overtime important? And I don't, once again, we hear words back, but we don't see necessarily the numbers, so people can, when I say people, the other council people can see exactly what these numbers mean. We kind of take their word for granted, and the business case hasn't been proven to me as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, yeah, it's certainly a heck of a spreadsheet looking through on the reasoning for some of the overtime in there, and some of the various categories for it. One of the things that you also mentioned, and I'm going to ask this and then toss it back to Marc. You mentioned in your questionnaire that you want to have kind of a focused economic development team, you called it, even having specific people on there devoted to issues or industries like healthcare. Yeah, obviously the dominant industry, biggest employer in the area. Talk about how that's worked elsewhere. You use Rochester, New York as an example, where you said it's been done successfully. So talk to me a little bit about how that's done, how much it costs, and how long it takes to see results from a team like that.
Sure. So, my gut feel was that we could do a great job with working with our businesses a little bit more closely, kind of like I did with this business roundtable in my district. I just got that feeling if we start working on common goals together, we could accomplish a lot more as a city, as a district or community. So that got me into thinking more about working with our small, medium-sized business. My research showed me there's a term called economic gardening. And as I started digging through it, I looked at, yes, Rochester, New York, the Denver area, using this very same methodology to focus on growth for your small and medium-sized businesses, where you have this economic team, and it could be made up of, yes, individuals from the city and or our Chamber of Commerce, or that economic development team over there, working with our businesses, help them grow new customers into new markets, some cost savings type ideas. When they do that, they're growing employees, and we have thousands of business, so you multiply that across all these businesses, and if they're growing employees, it's growing our population, it's growing the revenues. The question is, when you take a look at it, the question is, how do you pay for something like that? I think they've worked very closely with those businesses, and there are some costs with the business to work with this particular group.
I'm starting to see the comments get in there. Keep coming with your comments. Keep coming with your questions. We are going to get to them, I promise, earlier than usual, because sometimes we go over. Well, we touched on the hotel. It's here. We got it. It is what it is. So now we got to fill it up. Tourism. There's a lot of things that we're lacking in Peoria. There's a lot of things that we lost. Gus Macker, IHSA, different reasons for people to come to Peoria. We don't know what's going to happen post-COVID when it comes to the Civic Center in general, even though we give them that money. Who knows what's going to happen? What do you want to do, or what would you like to see in Peoria with regards to tourism, and how do you plan on facilitating that to make Peoria a go-to spot for whether it be leisure or business?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, working with my business roundtable group, the Northwoods Mall, the Westlake Shopping Center, the Glen Hollow, that particular area over there is one of our best retail sources for the city and a revenue generator for us. We've had a lot of discussion in not just that area. As I would be mayor, I'd be looking at the other pockets that we have in other shopping areas, retail. I think it's important we can be a regional draw for retail, restaurants, entertainment, and I don't think we've quite positioned ourselves with, let's say, 90 miles to 100 miles around Peoria to bring people into this community. And I think we are one of those locations that can be that. And we noticed from my discussions with this business roundtable, entertainment seems to be one of the missing elements from these types of shopping areas. So not just 4th District, but could be shops at Grand Prairie, over at Metro. Those are just, I think we got some incredible shopping locations. In Junction City, I mean, they've done a great job in some of these other little pocket developments that are popping up, and certainly our downtown, the Warehouse District. These are all great things that are I think an attraction. We need to be able to sell this, and we need to work with our Convention and Visitors Bureau to help market and sell what Peoria has to offer. And that's when we start seeing other events start to happen in Peoria.
And that's what I was asking. How do we do that? But are you saying it's a matter of figuring out how to sell Peoria?
Yeah, I think there's been some headway made over the years with that, but I think in order to attract people, we got to get that message out. So there needs to be more, and I think the Convention and Visitors Bureau plays a big part of that in helping us advertise. Not only are we advertising the retail and all the things that we have to do here with our retail, our restaurants, and our entertainment, but I think we also should be selling the great companies that we have here. So it makes it easier for them to recruit people into Peoria, and we need to sell it as a whole. We have a lot of great. I think we have. When you take a look at Peoria as a whole, we have a lot of great different types of neighborhoods, and I think that's one of our biggest draws, that why people come to Peoria. The many different price points, and overall, it's Peoria as far as pricing to purchase a home. I think we have some of the best prices around. When somebody comes from Chicago and they take a look at a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and they're like, "Wow, that would be $1 million plus in Chicago. We can get that here." They're practically already sold on the area. I think one of the other great things is it only takes like 15 minutes to get anywhere in Peoria. That's another major selling point for Peoria. So you can visit multiple locations when you're here, or if you're somebody who's living here, that connection 15 minutes anywhere in Peoria plays a lot to the quality of life as a resident here in Peoria.
Caterpillar headquarters obviously left, but there's still thousands of jobs that remain, but people still are apprehensive when it comes to the trajectory or just nervous, I think, when it comes to trajectory of Peoria, when it comes to jobs and businesses. Is there a certain company or a certain industry that you'd like to see here in Peoria that we can expand upon, or something that's already here that you would like to put more emphasis on from a business perspective here?
Yeah, well, certainly our medical industry is one that Peoria being a regional player for medical services, and besides the hospitals here, that whole business structure that works all together to serve them is important. So we need to see and continue to have those discussions with the medical players in town here in understanding what their needs are. I think that part would be very important for us as a city, to make sure that we're getting the most, helping them get the most out of their business here, making sure that we're helping them grow customers, or helping them if they have a problem in companies that they need to serve them, that we help connect them wherever we can.
If the election was run by fundraising numbers, with the general election approaching, you'd have lost. You got Sid with 193,000 from recent numbers, Rita Ali with 57,000. You come in third with 48,000. So obviously, if you're talking dollars, then you'd be third. But obviously, with votes, that can change anything. Is there a certain message that you want to resonate for voters about Jim Montelongo? And does that third placement with fundraising dollars make you nervous at all?
You know, just to talk about, first of all, the most important thing for me is the track record that I have, which none of the other candidates have. I have the track record, one, of serving as a two-term district council member, and as well as a one-time at large. But the track record that I have on delivering the basic city services to my district, which is the job of the city council person. Also, all the additional things that I got done for my district, from, once again, these 10 years of monthly meetings, the business roundtable, creating neighborhood associations, neighborhood watch groups, getting the project completed with Northmore Road, the substation at Northwoods Mall. I voted against these tax increases that have been so damaging to our city. Portillo's, the Ring doorbell. I mean, these are all things that I think I have spearheaded and have moved forward for my constituents, and I guess the benefit of the entire city. It's about the track record, and my track record is much bigger and better than any of my competition. So when it comes down to the fact, when people start researching and they take a look at our websites or take a look at our voting records, I think they'll be very proud to know that somebody like me is running to be mayor of Peoria, with the extensive background that I have serving as a council member, but as well with 30 years of business experience and the education of a master's in business administration. All of that together, I think I'm the logical choice to with the right message that takes Peoria forward.
if you are elected mayor, then you'll still have to build and foster relationships, not only with the new folks, but the folks that are already there, namely Rita and Sid. How do you feel your relationship is with the other people running and the people that are not only running for mayor and Rita and Sid, but the other folks that are trying to come in for city council, given that you'll be at the top of the table? How do you feel like your relationships are with those in order to get them, your vision executed?
Yeah, we're all professionals. We all know that the campaigning and sometimes may get a little awkward at times, but when campaigning's over, if you're serving, you're expected to put that behind you and start looking forward. So I would assume that the relationships will go on just like they have been. I think I have a good working relationship with most people on the council, and that's how I would be going forward anyways between now and if I don't get back on, if I don't win mayor, then I'll still have that, I think, professional relationship with them to move forward. And I would expect the same from them as well.
And before we head over to audience, Chris, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I wanted to touch real quickly on two things. First of which, I want to go back to a question earlier and get a little more clarity on it. Beyond the $5 million that we talked about in overtime as an area to look at controlling costs. You talk a lot about cost control, wanting to review the budget line by line. What other areas, I'm wondering, do you see citywide that we're spending money now that we can control? The peer notwithstanding, because we really can't do anything about it now. What other areas that we can control what we're spending? Do you think that we're spending too much on something with the city?
Chris, I think what would be important with a new mayor and new district council people coming in, or perhaps new ones coming in, I think it'd be important to review with our council, go line item by line item, and let's discuss each one of those. And we haven't done that probably in a couple years. I think it'd be up for that discussion again. I know we got the pandemic going on, but I think it's fair game to say new council, new mayor, it's time to review this, every line item in our budget and figure out what we think should be in there and shouldn't. So, and once again, it's a vote to see what happens there. I'm sure we'll find some stuff that we think we can do with and do without.
I haven't had a Saturday afternoon in the Gateway building with all of you guys in a while looking through that. But you've been on for 12 out of the last 14 years. So surely there have got to be some other things that jump out at you as being areas that you would target in there. What else beyond overtime leaps out at you from your look at the line by line? That was the one that I brought up during our session last year was the overtime, and I want to just peel that back and look into those details of that and prove it out. But really, that was probably the big one I thought that could bring $5 million more to helping our city. Okay.
Every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other one beyond that, both the public safety pension fee, which is due to expire next year, and we got to figure out how to cover those increasing costs, as well as the ongoing costs that we have for the CSO repair. Right now, those are both, call it a fee, it's a tax for the sewers and for public safety pensions. What do you replace those with in order to pay those bills? They're becoming so gigantic. They're threatening to blot out the rest of the budget. Where would you look to fund that money if it's not those two fees?
Right.
But we got to pay somehow.
And it's very significant. It's something that we have to look at very hard. I want to get some financial experts to work with me and the council to take a look at our options for perhaps re-amortizing the the pension liability that we have. And, I think we also need to be working with all the different cities. We're not the only city that has a pension problem. Many different cities throughout Illinois. I think we need to be working with our state legislators to helping us come up with some solutions for this as well. So those are really the two things that I think that we can do to try and manage our budget.
Hey, what should we be doing that we haven't with our state legislators, though? The Illinois Municipal League, individual cities all got together and pushed through 2 years ago the package that helped combine all the downstate systems. I mean, you know from being involved in politics and government for a while, the legislature doesn't tend to go back and take a second bite at the apple that close to a major reform that they've made. What's our sales pitch that gets lawmakers to do something they don't usually do, that we haven't tried already?
Right. I think we need to probably take a look at that. What were the effects of those changes that they made? I'm hearing perhaps something different of it being something that's been very helpful. I think we need to take a look at that and have that discussion with them and say, this is what we got from this. And I think especially right now that we have a pandemic that's going on that has hit our revenues very significantly. They know they have to be engaged with us to help us solve some of these major problems that we have right now. So I think they'll be more engaged with this process to help us come up with a solution that our city can deal with, because it's something that's going to it's something that could help us or very much hurt us for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully they don't resolve their own budget difficulties by cutting the local government distributive fund and hurt us even more on sales tax revenue.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to toss it over to Marc. We're going to go to some audience questions on Facebook.
So we will just a sec. I gotta find it. Gotta find them. Okay, there we go. We'll shoot to some audience questions. I had a couple more questions on the back end, and then we'll shoot into the lightning round with you. And of course, if you've been watching, then you know the audience questions are brought to you by RhondaGuytonTravel.com. Only they give you domestic and international travel with a personal touch. Leave all planning to RGT. That's RhondaGuytonTravel.com. And the first question comes from, we can go in order. The first question comes from Jim. He says, is there a potential conflict of interest with, oh, no, we already addressed that. So my apologies. The other one come from Jim though. And he says, is a car wash really the best use for the corner of Glen and University? Why can't the city be more discerning on things of this nature? A more upscale development would be perfect for that corner.
Yeah, I would agree. An upscale development would be great for that corner. However, there is I'm guessing it's a company or maybe a person that owns that property with their rights to be able to sell it to whomever they would like to. Where the city gets involved with is if there's going to have to be a change in the zoning. And if there's any special need for something like that, that's when the city council gets involved. But certainly, I think most of the community would like to see a development happen there other than a car wash. But they also have the business rights to be able to move forward with it. But it comes back to the city council under a special use. So that's why our opinions are getting involved with this here. I've not had a lot of favorable feedback from my constituents. This particular project is in the 3rd district. Yeah, in 3rd district with Councilman Tim Riggenbach, who has deferred this item here for more discussion. So we'll see what ends up happening with this development.
The next question comes from Carrie, and she says, did the city actually raise $5 million to fix the roads, or were the projections overly rosy and not less than the $5 million?
I'm not sure what exactly she's talking about.
On the taxes that were increased at the end of 2015.
I guess I don't know how to answer that question with the actual outcomes from that.
Carrie, if you want to kind of rephrase that question, because I was trying to decipher it myself, and I don't want to throw your question off. So if you want to just throw that back in there, we can definitely take that on. And this question comes from Karen. She says, "What will you do to bring the 2 decommissioned fire trucks back online? What show will I go see after my house burns down?" So what will you do to bring the 2 decommissioned trucks back online?
So, so we have to live within our budget. Our fire chief made a recommendation, and so to fit inside our budget, that's what the city council voted on that, and the majority voted to close 2 firehouses at that time. One of them coming back. So what do we need to do? We need to start growing business as soon as possible so that we have more people coming into our community so that we can pay for additional city services.
And this last question I see anyway comes from Matt, and he says, "Where would you recommend cuts when there is a budget shortfall?"
You know, and we had some of the discussion earlier. If there's like overtime, for example, that was our approach. So, but you know, I think more importantly, the efforts that we're going to take is for growth and to grow revenues for our city. That's the only direction that we have to go. I know we're at probably a all-time low as far as city employees working for the city, and these taxes that I did not vote for that are in place today, we have to focus on growth and growing our city, helping our small and medium-sized businesses grow employees and grow revenues for our city.
Okay, and I got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll circle into the lightning round. But where'd they go? Oh yeah. So you've been on the council for the last several years, and in the last several years, we've had several news articles, YouTube pages made. Obviously, you're familiar with the 24/7 article, "Worst City for Blacks," and one of the worst city for Blacks in America. There's also a YouTube video out that showed Peoria as one of the 10 places that you should never move to. What can we do? I understand you are business minded and you're approaching the mayoralship with the budget in mind and things like that. But from just perspective from outsiders, and when I say outsiders, people from outside of Peoria in general, what can you do, or what would you want to do to kind of give the image of Peoria a facelift overall?
Sure. So I think certainly if and when elected to being mayor, I think it kind of changes history right there. I mean, I know when I was first elected to the council, I was the first Hispanic elected to the city council. So I would be the first Hispanic elected to being mayor of Peoria. As far as me being on the council, in my first term as an at-large member, I put together a program to teach small minority businesses, women-owned businesses, how to do business with the city. And I think over this 10-year period of time has resulted in millions of dollars of contracts. I think we need to retell our story as well. And I think we have a lot of opportunity as well to have our city staff look more like what our community looks like as well.
So do you feel like there's a lack of minorities in city council or city hall in general?
Yeah, I think the numbers prove that as well. We've had open discussion like that with the public on, for example, the fire department, police department, and public works. We've had those discussions, and so yeah, there's opportunity for to changing how things look like in our city hall.
Are we going about that in the right way, or is there something different that we need to be doing since the numbers have actually gotten worse in the last couple of years rather than standing pat or getting better?
Yeah, and I know some of that goes along with, in part with union type employees and whose seniority has something to work with that too. So I think that's some of the challenge. But it's something that when we put together our city manager goals, that was something that I asked for specifically, is to charge him with and make it part of his goals that we do his evaluation on minority hiring as well. So he sees that as something that's important, not only with hiring people, but also with contracts, the city's contracts.
And is that the trick for the whole community to be looked at a more positive light? Because I made a joke on Facebook yesterday that people are leaving Peoria, Illinois to go to Peoria, Texas. And that was just in reference to so many people. I think every other week I see somebody that's legit moving to Dallas, if not the greater Texas area, but just Dallas in general. How can we retain citizens here in Peoria outside of just teaching people business and how to do business with the city? Because not everybody wants to do that.
You know, I think one of the other things, and I mentioned it earlier, and to me, being there in the community, like these monthly meetings that I've had, and going out there into parts of the city where people feel like their voices aren't being heard, to bring our staff into having these coffee type meetings in lots of different neighborhoods, so we can develop relationships with them, so people can be heard, so that we can react to some of what their needs are. I think that's another important part. And also being the mayor, you get a chance to connect people. You're a connector. You're hearing sometimes what the needs are from maybe the business community, and just left a meeting knowing that somebody's brother moved into town and is looking for a job, for example. And you're like, hey, I just was in a meeting earlier, and you have a chance to connect those types of relationships as well. And I'd also like to be able to challenge and as we have our businesses growing and expanding, that we make sure that we send that message out to them as well, to take a look at their minority participation, minority hiring in their companies as well. I think those are some of the things that we can do better.
I appreciate you coming out to Peoria High School to do that, to do the debate that we set up, the in-person debate. I think it was the only debate that has been done in person, but you would know better than I do because I don't participate in the debates myself. But while you were there, one of the guys that helped put that together, Pat Faget, the debate was over and he Kobe'd a water bottle into the garbage can. And I couldn't help but think, oh man, we need a recycling bin here. The apartment complex that I live in, no recycling. I know recycling is an afterthought for most people. Is there anything that you would want to do, or is it even important to you with regards to like a city effort, a citywide effort to be heavy on recycling and just kind of get into the 21st century with regards to green energy and things like that?
I think we got a pretty good program right now with PDC, and so there's not probably, I guess there's always more that you can do, but I think from our side, and we have a lot of participation in that. I think that's something that's been good for our city, but there's always something more that you can do.
And last question before we get into the lightning round, you've been endorsed by Chuck Weaver. What does that mean for your campaign?
You know what? Chuck and his family have been here a really long time in the Peoria community. I served with Chuck Weaver on the city council and got to know him very well. And I was very just honored to have his support. He's very much a business thinker, and to get his support, I'm just honored to get that. So it was a big and important thing for me.
Okay, Chris, do you have anything before we get into the lightning round?
No. I think we're all good. Let's have a little bit of fun here to close us
Well, this
out.
is the part that stressed me out the most was this lightning round. I'm like, what's the lightning round?
No, it's meticulously crafted.
Okay.
Now, the
Let
only
me
thing,
get straight here.
but lightning round. When I think about lightning round, I can't help but think dating back to the debate. So you really ain't gonna let me pop no fireworks, man? Are you really not gonna let me pop fireworks?
Oh, that was your question? No fireworks. You know what? When I saw the people with commercial grade type fireworks lighting them off next to the gas station, I'm like, yeah, we can't have this. Especially when I'm pumping the gas. I'm like,
No,
yeah,
I give you that. Like maybe we need to come up with a test or something. You get some certification or something, just for the back of the house. Okay.
It's only because, you know what? People can get their hands on these fireworks that are commercial grade. I'm like, they fire up, I don't know, probably a couple hundred feet up in the sky now, and boom. And there's fallout too from ashes coming down or flames coming down, landing on people. It's gone a little bit too much. If it was like very small driveway type, some that I don't have a problem with, maybe something like that. But people always take it to the max, where you got the guy lighting it off next to the gas station. I'm like, so it's hard to try and make a rule, and then you're like, well, what about this guy over here that's doing it? And so I'm going to go and err on the side of safety.
I mean, gas station. Look, if I saw somebody do it at a gas station, I'd probably be nervous about that too. Maybe we can find a little parcel or something. We got a lot of vacant lots. We'll talk about it. This lightning round is sponsored by McCall Law Offices, PC, and Halliday McCall, located at 1225 North Street, where they focus on personal injury, accidents, family law, and criminal defense. Call for a consultation for free at 309-377-HELP to put their attorneys in your corner. Okay, so you got a minute, 30 seconds. Most people don't make it through, but we're going to see what we can do. And it's either or just rapid fire answer. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let me get my buzzer on. Okay, yeah. Okay, boom. Okay, when's his birthday today? Michael Jordan or LeBron?
Michael Jordan.
Mac or PC? You're a computer guy.
PC.
Apples, oranges.
Apples.
What app takes up the most time of your day?
Ooh. Probably Facebook.
Dream car.
Ferrari.
If you were an animal, what would you be?
A lion.
Favorite sport? Central.
Golf.
Golf. What food do you love that everybody else hates?
Ooh. Gosh, you got me this broccoli.
Favorite location in Peoria?
Favorite location? Home.
Favorite business mogul?
Say that again.
Favorite business mogul?
Michael Porter.
Favorite drink?
Coke.
Batman or Superman?
Batman.
Favorite local restaurant?
Sushigawa.
Old Mall or New Mall?
Say that again.
Old Mall or New Mall?
Old Mall.
Favorite movie?
Patton.
Harold or Rumburgers?
Rumburgers.
And who do you endorse for city council?
Jim Montelongo.
What? Come on.
Well, that's fair. It's one of 11 seats.
Oh, man. And that concludes the lightning round. I missed out one question, but we'll throw it in there. It's Black History Month. Favorite Black history icon?
MLK.
Sounds good. Chris, you got anything else for Jim? Do you have anything else that you would want the voters to know, or any message that you want to leave with the people watching?
Yeah, I think what's most important, we have a very important vote coming up for mayor. It's going to be pivotal for our city. It's going to be a tough decision for you, but I think what Peoria is in need of right now, we're in need of a professional business leader with city council experience, who can deal with our budget, who can deliver on the basic city services, and work with our community and grow jobs. And that person is me. I have almost 2 times the amount of experience than all of my opponents combined. And I just want to take my 30 years of business experience, my 12 years serving on the Peoria City Council, my master's in business administration, take all this and work every day as hard as I can to help turn our city back around and making it the great city that it is.
All right. Jim Montelongo, thank you very much for being here. Everybody remember, though you probably know if you're watching us already, we have less than 6 days now until the polls are closed in the election. You can still vote early through Monday, and then election day is next Tuesday. We'll know by a little later than now, next Tuesday night, who the two are who are advancing into the general election. So make sure your vote gets counted.
I tell everybody, man, we need to switch up the terminologies to get people out to vote. Instead of primaries, we're going to call them playoffs. Instead of general elections, we're going to call them championships.
There you go.
Man,
you know what? It changed my mindset on it too. I'm with you on that.
I think it'll change. I think we can make an impact and single-handedly bring out more voters and increase voter participation. That's what I believe. So I'll talk to them over at Brandywine and see if we can get something done.
As long as it's not a 64 bracket that we got to start with.
Oh man, it's too much. You got to pass the signatures. You pass the signatures, you're good to go. This has been brought to you by State Farm agent Aaron Kilgore, located at 3805 North Sterling Avenue, where he specializes in car, home, and life insurance and investments. He's the best in the business, and you can make him work for you today by calling 309-685-7111. Jim, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Sure thing.
Have a good night. Good luck.
Thank you so much.